So I showed you, I did that one brochure once, 1 year, and the rest of the time what I've always used is my stuff, right? So client inquiry gets to a certain point. We take all the books and we like post-it note certain sections of them that are relevant to that guy. We get some CDs. We get a big pile of testimonial letters. We put it all in a big box and we send it to him. Well, nobody sends him all that crap. We send bobbleheads. You know, well, who sends them a bobblehead of the guy on a bull? Nobody sends them that, right? So, and they don't nobody's going to throw that out. You know, I don't know what they're doing with them, but they ain't chucking them. I mean, I've had people tell me, you know, they couldn't figure out what to do with it, so their kids got it. They got it on the shelf in their office, and people ask them about it, and they don't know why they got it on the shelf in the office, but they just don't feel like they should throw it out. Well, that's perfect, right? I've sent clocks. Now for me, it's more about media than it is, so like in book promotion. So, you know, like I got an interview coming up in a magazine, and I started sending that guy stuff a year ago. Never really asked for nothing, just sent him stuff. And more stuff, and more stuff, and more stuff. And now, once the interview's booked, I've sent him my No BS Time Management wall clock. I've sent him 2 bobbleheads, so he's got one for his kid. I sent him one of every book with post-it noted sections he should read. I'm dripping on him between now and the interview. Here's what everybody else does. They send him a press kit, 2 pockets, okay? Some stuff stuffed in each pocket, a little business card stuffed in the 4 corners. And he gets like 20 of those a week. That's what he gets. And they're all interchangeable. So if you're going to cold prospect and you're going to send people stuff, you better really wow them with the stuff. Right? And better it not all be pretty. Because pretty much what everybody sends them is pretty. Depending on the market, some of it has to be pretty, but it doesn't all have to be pretty. And amongst the stuff, the best thing you can send, of course, is a book or books, because nothing has more assumed expert status than you wrote a book. And they don't have to be, I brought some of them are embarrassing actually, but if you go back far enough, and you can take a look at this stuff on the breaks if you want to. First of all, here's a copywriter guy, John Francis Teig. I may be mispronouncing his name. I've mispronounced for years. He's got that quote that I really like. In the country of the blind, a one-eyed man is king. And he wears an eye patch. You understand the importance of the quote, by the way, to consultants and coaches. So you don't have to know everything. You just have to know more than they do, right? But this is a good book. You'll see I got it posted, noted, and highlighted and stuff. I mean, it's a good book, but really it's a promotion. It's his calling card. It's a promotional book, and it's self-published, which he could have done a little bit better job of making that look more real if he had thought about it. But there ain't much to it. It's, I don't know, it's 80-some-odd pages. The chapters are short. The chapters start all the way down on the page, you know. I mean, he pretty much wrote, I think it's probably the fewest number of pages you can bind. So, I mean, he pretty much did as little as he possibly could do to be able to have a book instead of a brochure. Okay? And he's done very, very, very well as a copywriter with this tool. Way back, this is really a crappy little thing, but it made us both a lot of money. Bill Brooks and I did one together, save money. 2 of us do the same book. Neither one of us had much money. On time management. And there ain't much to it. If you look at it, like we covered whole pages with graphics. Write less. Got to do graphics. Charts are good. Here's a whole chapter. That's it. Quotes, you know. Fill page with piece of clip art. Okay? Doesn't matter. That's what I'm telling you. It's like, it's better than a brochure. It's a book. Okay? And Brooks actually did more with this than I did, but both of us made a lot of money from this little book. Okay? I used this for years. You guys probably haven't seen some of these, have you? I'll bet there's 100,000 of these things out there. And all this is old columns and newsletter material and monologues and stuff put together in a book. And there's a lot of pictures and clip art and stuff, so I've filled it up, with graphics and stuff. So, I mean, I was in a hurry, you know what I'm saying, like I always am. So this is like slapped together on a Saturday. But, I mean, it served its purpose. Right? And a handful of these going out with stuff. Now, you can, do better, and we got more sophisticated over the years. This book, by the way, this is one of my NSA positioning books. And here's how far this, let's see, when was this done? And here's how cheap I was. Let's see if there's a copyright in it. This is like 1981. Introduction by very young-looking Mark Victor Hansen. We both had hair. This book is typeset on the typewriter. For those of you who don't know, typewriter's a thing with a roller keys. This is typeset on the typewriter. Okay? The bright side ain't justified because I didn't want to take the time. I know how to do it on a typewriter. You got to type it twice and go back and take the units out, and it's a big pain in the ass. So I didn't even justify the right side. I mean, I typed it and we printed it. That's what we put a cover on it. Okay? This thing probably made me, I don't know, $500,000. There's a direct pitch in it for a course in the back, sold a lot of courses, and essentially there's what you would call my brochure in the middle, resources, services, and so forth. And we just mailed this to every NSA member. That's what we did. Okay? Better than a direct mail piece. This is a book I ghost wrote for a franchisor, Don Dwyer, carpet cleaning franchising, and instant elevation of him above all other competing franchisors because he's the author of the book on how to be successful in business. So the franchise prospect's getting the service master pitch. He's getting like 4 or 5 carpet cleaning franchise pitches. The only franchisor that's written the book on how to be successful is Don. Okay? Better thing to put in the package. So you got to send them stuff that wows them. Big box of stuff. If you happen to have a lot of testimonials, so Stephen asked me how many books is right, because Stephen's got like 19 books, and some of them are like the Manhattan phone book. Like the book on place is like the Manhattan phone book. It's like big, heavy, 1,000 pages. Nobody's ever going to read it. Nobody. Oh, yeah. It's really entertaining. You don't flatter yourself. It's a very good book, but entertaining it isn't. Painful would be a better description. Worth the pain, by the way, but painful. And nobody's ever going to read it. He hadn't even read it. Okay? And nobody's going to read all this stuff you send them. That's not the point. The point is you got more stuff than anybody else has got. So you got to be a genius. If he sends all 19 of his books, believe me, the guy couldn't live long enough, even if he wanted to read all this stuff. But holy crap, look at all this stuff. Larry Dolan used to send, came out of LMI, speaker consultant friend of mine. He used to just get one of them big boxes that you get reams of paper in, like at Office Max now, the big box that all the reams of paper come in. Fill it up with his testimonial letters. Put duct tape around it and send it out to the prospect. Is anybody actually going to read all those testimonial letters? No, they don't have to. That's not the point. The point is the bulk in this case. Now they're going to read a few of them, but after that it's like, enough already, I get it. And the other 4 guys sent me a trifold brochure. So if you are going to cold prospect, wow them. For the sake of lunch, I'm not at a real good stopping point, but we will just stop. And we will pick up where we left off when we come back at 1:15. You're up.
2 questions. First topic's testimonials and endorsed mailings. You spend a lot of time on talking about controlling your message, what's said about you. I've heard you also speak about the fact that testimonials, when written by you, sound canned and contrived, and it's better first person, but by the same token, guiding them to get the message across you want. So how do you ask for what you want, get for what you want in testimonials and endorsed mailings while having a nice mix of original thought and sound?
Personally, I am blessed in the sense that most of the testimonials I get are from people we have educated about good testimonials. Yeah. So, you know, I get a lot of good ones that aren't, you know, that don't need doctoring.
And I have people I can get them from,
yeah.
But I don't think they have any idea what it sounds like.
One answer is you got to show them samples, right? Some people make up little checklists of, you know, I don't want you to lie, but if any of these 7 things are true, yeah. Sometimes you ought to just, if it's important enough to you and there's few enough of them, interview them by phone or in person.
Can I use the content?
Get it all, get it transcribed, go back and tweak it, and then have them...
Get them approved.
Yeah. We just went through this with our corporate client. Bill and I are doing a lot of work for Miracle Air. And they have 1,200 stores. They're in the hearing aid business. And it actually, frankly, didn't occur to me that one of the problems we were going to face was no testimonials. Because first of all, there's 1,200 stores, so you would think, well, hell, everybody's got to have one, right? I mean, so I got to be able to have 1,200 to choose from, right? And I mean, it's an emotional purchase. So the testimonials should naturally be about grandkids and birds and, you know. Well, for starters, they like, huh, what? Testimonial, you know. Then, because they're not using any in their advertising. None, zero, zip, nothing. A few of the franchise owners, including a couple who were already Glazer Kennedy Inner Circle members, had started moving in that direction. So they had like a testimonial book in their lobby and stuff, but like nothing system-wide. And then most of them had fill out a testimonial questionnaire, which they had cleverly constructed to get nothing but blindingly dull, ordinary information. So the first thing they send me is all these filled out questionnaires, right, which are, you know, how would you rank your experience at your Miracle Air Center, satisfactory or unsatisfactory? So satisfactory, you know. And the essay part of that is, Marge was very nice to me. Well, you know, I'm kind of looking for, you know, I'm a retired, you know, rock musician whose hearing went because of playing backup for the Rolling Stones, and until I got your thing, I couldn't hear my grandkid. I mean, that's what I'm looking for. Well, they have no idea, right? So it took us a lot of effort to get them with samples, including I wrote fakes. I mean, I wrote them and said, here, go find one. You know, and I mean, we finally, through an enormous amount of pain and struggle, have arrived at about 30 to 35. You know, I knew that they're there. You know, it's just nobody was doing the right things to get them. When you are actively involved in doing them that way, you're right. The trick is to avoid having them all sound like you wrote them. And so you got to like try and capture their voice when you take what...
Interviewing, maybe.
That helps. Yeah.
Is there a difference between how the purpose and sound of a testimonial versus the structure and message of an endorsed mailing, for example?
Not much. I mean, you really want... I mean, the only difference, the only thing added to the endorsed mailing is sort of the way the guy gets into it. I've written to you and sent you this letter because, you know, we're both members of the Elks, and I know, like me, you... Humda, you know, so there's got to be some entry into giving the testimonial. And then you have to decide what kind of exit you want out of it on the endorsed mailing, because that's everything from a lift note saying, read all of his stuff that's enclosed, or sometimes actually into the PS. I've arranged with Barry to give you a free half-hour consultation because you and I are buddies but you got to read his stuff and call him right away so you can go all the way into the offer in the endorsed mailing. In some rare cases, I've done the entire pitch redone in the voice of the endorser. So there's like a 24-page sales letter now rewritten as if it came from the endorser. That's fairly rare, but there are times when you can do it.
One of the Craigs does that, right? Uses the real estate agent as the front face.
Well, actually, he owns her. So that's...
Uses, owns.
It's an endorser, but she's owned.
Okay.
Writing in other people's voices that's like the freelance copywriter's task. See, it's from a copywriting standpoint, those of you who've worked at learning copywriting, say to learn to do it for yourself is not, the next step up of difficulty is actually doing it for other people. Because to do it for yourself, you only have to do it in your voice. I got to be able to write for 50 different people and not have it all sound like Dan wrote it. And so, like having them on audio and being able to hear, syntax, that kind of thing is helpful. I just wrote for one of the things we're using in Miracle Air is the original inventor of the product is like 70 some odd years old, and he's like John Wayne. I mean, he was which they weren't using him. He was in the Battle of Bulge, and he was shot down 3 times, and he escaped on a bicycle through France in midnight. And I mean, for real. No, the guy's a real, honest to God, incredible war hero that they're not using for nothing, And so I'm writing in his voice. Well, I went and got a bunch of like war history magazines, and because I want to hear how 80-year-old people say things, and I didn't really have access to him, so I had to do some work to like get it. Back at Guthrie Renker years ago when I wrote for Tarkenton, I mean, Frank came out of the recording booth and said, "I don't know who you think you're writing to, bud, but there's too many words in these sentences. I mean, I'm a short sentence guy. I don't need these complex sentence structures, A, it's not how I talk, and B, I can't handle them. I get lost. I don't know where I'm at. I wrote for Joan Rivers, and so I listened to umpteen Joan Rivers comedy records and read Joan's book, and then you can kind of do it. The testimonies, don't do them all at the same time. Don't sit down and do 4 or 5 of them all at the same time. But certainly, if you're only doing a few and you have the luxury to do it, interview them, tape them, massage them, and basically you're doing befores and afters whenever you can. So that's okay. You had a second question?
Yeah, I know you guys created that IMA association. Here's the question: how do you feel? Because you said ask questions. How do you feel? Structured. How do you feel about creating an association or even a school that certifies salespeople in a niche with ascension to multiple levels like College 101, College 201, therefore creating all kinds of back-end alumni meetings, required continuing education for fees, teleclasses, frame certificate, branded materials, all that kind of stuff? And the second to that is, what do you feel are the important components of something like that, and what are the associated traps?
Well, you answered your second question with your description in your first question. I mean, you named them all. I mean, the most important component in all of that is they got to believe it's real. So, I mean, look, the only reason Harvard works is because everybody has accepted the fact that Harvard is Harvard. The fact that a bunch of us sat in a room at some point in time with William James and made the whole damn thing up in order to make some money. See, that's long since forgotten. And so, if you're gonna make it real association, and issue real continuing education credits, and first of all, you're gonna have some legal compliance issues, varying industry by industry by industry, state by state by state by state. If you're gonna take a school position, you have legal compliance issues. Most people ignore all that stuff, but if you start, for example, most states have some version of a private and technical school board, which, if you have physical presence in the state, governs the use of such words as schools and colleges and universities and all of that. Even on a distance basis, there's law in this field. Gene Kelly's our distance learning guy. He can on a break. Wave your hand, Gene, so he knows who you are. Gene can tell you all the horror shows. And, of course, Robert Scrobe, who's right up here, you asked me where he was. He's right here in front. Wave your hand right there. Is Mr. Association. So, and he's formed associations for Scott and for others either here or not here. But I think it is a long road requiring some patience. I think it's a very real and viable approach to this business. I think it is, for some people, it's just an alternative front end, and that's okay too. I think it is a very valuable asset once built. And all of the things you name, certifications, levels with prerequisites, distance and live learning, feeding into coaching, alumni societies, accreditation, university bookstore, on and on and on. I think all of those are the component parts. The thing that either makes it work or doesn't make it work is a sense that it's real, a sense that this is the thing in our business we do. The chiropractors in the room and the people that work with the chiropractic profession, there's a thing in chiropractor called the Parker Foundation. And it doesn't have the power it once had, but for almost a decade, Parker was, if you were a chiropractor, what you did is you went to Parker. That's what you did. And so the conversation was, you going to Parker? Of course I'm going to Parker. I'll see you at Parker. I'll see you at Parker. I mean, everybody went to Parker. And the Parker Foundation was like viewed as some thing it wasn't. I mean, it was a thing that the Parker family put together to make money. That's what it was. But it had an accepted position in the industry as this benign foundation and premier training organization and event of the year. In a sense, the national convention of the profession. The Maddow brothers have managed to do it in dentistry to some extent. And so Parker was, I mean, at its peak, 35,000 people in chiropractor, there'd be 5,000 people at Parker. And I mean, you went for 5 days. And every vendor exhibited, and I mean, they took over Vegas, you know. And they got there slow and steady and painstaking, but a huge asset, huge money. Because you now have, you know, vendors will give you money when they won't give us money under normal circumstances. Big companies will come play when big companies won't play with us and so forth. But so second thing is creating the position of this is what you do. If you're in the, you know, they don't get it quite done, but it's sort of the position the chamber tries to take on a local basis, and the position the Better Business Bureau tries to take is, oh, you're a small business in Cleveland. What you do is you join the Cleveland Better Business Bureau. That's what you do. It's not like it's an option. It's like that's what you do, you know. And so that's the second thing that you try and get to. And then third is sort of optional but helpful, is if the thing delivers something to them that is actually useful in the marketplace, in either getting business or getting better business or making a sale, you know.
That's the real purpose, is making.
So you are able to brand you're able to create a credibility device for them that is actually helpful in their business, has some teeth, can be taken away from them. Right. Those three component parts. Okay?
Thank you.
You, sir.
I have a couple.
Oh, now you're not allowed to refer to notes, man. We ain't got all day here.
Okay. Prior to the break, you talked about cold calling, acquiring customers, that method. When you do that, or when you did that, did you?
I didn't actually say cold call. I said get them cold, but
yeah, get them cold.
There's a difference.
Okay. Getting them cold. Did you then put them in your intake process, or what happened once you made the contact, you sent them the material, got the first meeting? How did?
Well, as I said, you lose the ability to do much takeaway positioning when you're doing that, going directly at them cold, because it's so incongruent that you can't flip them on a dime. So when you're in one way, shape, or form trying to get to a face-to-face, it's hard to simultaneously be doing takeaway. Now, if you sneak up entirely, so you're going in to interview the CEO for a book on that auspices, and now good conversation occurs, and gee, maybe we should do something together, and so forth. You could take him back out now, drop him through a process. But if you're going to an appointment and now you're going in fundamentally to do a sales presentation, who's kidding who? You're going in to do a sales presentation. So there's not much of a process to it at that point. It relies on you. And you do sacrifice some control issues by doing that. That's why it's the least desirable way to get clients. The perversity of consulting is this, and it's why being talked about is so important. So here's the example that I always use. Let's say we're all out in the hall here, on a break at somebody else's meeting. So I'm an attendee just like you are, he is, everybody else is. And I hear the two of you guys talking, and you're complaining about this problem you got in your business. Say a conversation, let's make it something simple. Let's say it's like, let's say it's employee theft, okay? And you're telling him about how your employees all steal, et cetera. And I hear the conversation, and I'm the guy. I'm the theft solution guy, and I know I could solve your problem in 10 seconds. If I turn and tap you and say, couldn't help but overhear your conversation, and excuse me, Barry, but I'm the guy, I'm the theft guy, and I can solve your problem. Okay, you are mentally, if not physically, backing away from me and raising every kind of resistance known to man because I'm overt. Okay? And everybody's attitude, unfortunately, about being presented an idea by someone selling it to them is resistance. Same scenario. He's standing there. He taps and says, sorry, I couldn't help but overhear the conversation. I don't know if you know the guy, but he's actually here at this conference, this Kennedy guy who's here somewhere. I don't know, he's in the blue shirt. He's the theft guy. He knows how to solve your problem, okay? You will now come find me. Everything will go different from that point out. I can do pure takeaway. Well, I'd love to help you, but I gotta go. You gotta call the office. I can do all that shit. When I approached you, see, I can't do it. So your attitude's different. I'm restricted in the techniques and strategies that I can use in handling you. That's why cold, overt prospecting is the worst thing in the world you can do. If you speak, even if you are overt in the speech, you can still be, you can tell the story of, hey, when I was over in consulting with XYZ company, I did this, and this, and this happened. And oh, by the way, I do occasionally, see, you can still now do takeaway, but you can be overt. I do occasionally accept new clients, and so, it's not necessarily immediate availability and so forth. But if that interests anybody, see me before I leave, and then you can move on. They're still now coming to you, right? But when you're going to them, you lose a lot of the ability to do a lot of really good things, and you exchange them in trade for being an overt prospector. And while you may choose or need to do it for a brief period of time, you've got to get away from it as quickly as you can, because the heart surgeon doesn't make cold calls. Right? He doesn't telemarket. He doesn't send out cold direct mail, And so at the top end of every pyramid here, nobody makes cold calls. At the bottom end, everybody makes cold calls, and somewhere in between, there's less and less and less of it. So the minute you start doing cold prospecting in any way, shape, or form that is perceived as cold prospecting, you are putting yourself in the eyes of the prospect at the bottom of the pyramid. And so it's not that heart surgeons are above doing it. They just have figured out it's not, particularly effective for them. So you've got to get away from it just as soon as you can. I mean, now lead generation, cold prospecting, even that's relatively overt. But now you can at least put them through a little process. So now you think about, like our IBAs, if they bring everybody in through the greatest free gift offer, right? So our piece looks like this, okay, if you haven't seen it. And so that signs somebody up for the free 3-month trial, right? Then they get to a free chapter meeting. Now they see the guy in action at the chapter meeting, okay? Those first 2 steps were pretty overt, but now he gets to switch gears in the context of the chapter meeting to being, we got a mastermind group, but we only got a few spaces left in it. You got to fill out an application. We're selective about it. He's able to switch gears because he had this feeder device at the bottom, right? And so if you have to cold prospect and you have the ability to take the time, you build a feeder device at the bottom so that you can be overt at the bottom and then at some place in time make the switch, right? Bad.
Instead of having a quick question, I have a brief inquiry. It's in the. I can't take credit for it, but I won't divulge who did. It's in the area of damaging admissions. For example, divulging realities. Is there a timing or to get maximum benefit when you're doing a damaging admission? Or in other words, do you wait till it's over? For example, let's say bankruptcy. Do you make that admission to your folks at the time? Or do
Not
you
if you can help it. Not if you can help it. There's no set answer to your question, and if there are problems that have any likelihood of surfacing, then the worst thing in the world you can do is hide them. Right. The cover-up's worse than the crime, right? And so everybody gets themselves in trouble with the cover-up. But so there's no set answer to your question. It is more about, what's more useful to think about is how to use it, even more so than when to use it. And you want an opportunity to be able to put it in context. So again, because of these Dan is God things on the left side of the ledger, the Dan has been and actually is horribly dysfunctional things on the right side of the ledger are useful. If this is not there, these things could be insurmountable, okay. Right? So it's about context. Now, if you have no alternative, again, you face whatever disaster you are facing. If not at the moment, certainly, soon, not later.
Right.
But there's no pat answer to your question.
Is there something like you could do an attachment? For example, Robert Kiyosaki talks about how he did this, or Trump talked about how he did this. Is there? Do you do that, or those are too big of a bridge to try to tie together?
No, I don't think they are. I insisted on it when I worked with him, and I stopped working with him in part because he refused to honor it. We had a situation with Rodney's brothers with James Tollison's business in Arizona of having been previously convicted and served 5 years in the Ohio State Penitentiary, and prior to that having been sued by the Pennsylvania State Attorney General's office, and prior to that, and I insisted it all be on the order form. So, and people had to sign that particular place on the order form that they had read all of this horrid stuff and knew it before they bought this $5,000 course. And what it forced everybody to do was deal with it before they got to the point of the order form. And so we had sales reps and we had seminars and so forth. So now it had to be dealt with. And you would think it would suppress sales, but actually, if anything, it might have worked the other way. I mean, it was presented well, but still. It's about as ugly as I just said it. It's actually worse. Look, you can build a bridge from anything to anything. You just have to figure out how to do it. It is my profound conviction there is no mess, no scandal, no disaster that is big enough to stop people from giving somebody money. It's just a question now of how they handle that presentation. Okay, thanks, guys. This is sort of an answer to the cold prospecting thing, too. So I'm still on the how to get a client and how to get a client cold if you must, but also how to create them coming to you. Not that anybody remembers the sales letter, but one of the things I promised you while you were here was my number one career strategy. And it also refers to something I told you yesterday, which was the worst news you could hear the entire time you were here, which is you got to be a good writer. The single best tool you will ever have for a whole variety of purposes, including this one, getting people to come to you and ask you to help them or advise them, is a newsletter. And it allows you to put it in front of people in a herd and people not in a herd. The nice thing about newsletters, amongst many other benefits, is that busy, successful people subscribe to a bunch of them, and in many cases they don't remember what the hell they subscribed to and what they didn't subscribe to. So you can take a target list and start sending them a newsletter marked, here is your copy of your paid newsletter this month. And even though they didn't subscribe to it, since they're getting it and it says they did, they figure they must have. And they'll now pay just as much attention to it as if they had. Do you need me to say that again? Okay. Busy, successful people subscribe to a lot of newsletters. In most cases, they don't remember what the hell they subscribe to half of the time. But if it arrives and says, here's this month's copy of your paid subscription newsletter, since it says that, I must have paid for it. And since I paid for it, I'm not going to throw it out. See, it's not junk mail anymore because I paid for it. So now I'll read it. And so you can create a farm, a subscriber base that you deliver a newsletter to who never opted into it, never subscribed to it in the first place, but now will pay just as much attention to it as if they had. Now, it's better if they subscribe to it. So let me give you a couple of examples, though. There's somebody doing it to me right now, by the way, and it took me 3 months before I noticed, which is really very cool. I get a lot of health newsletters. I've subscribed to a lot of health newsletters. One, because I do copywriting work in that category, and I want to get all the junk mail. So the way to get all the junk mail is to subscribe to a bunch of stuff, because then you get all the junk mail. And so I really want the junk mail as much as I want the damn newsletters, but you got to buy the newsletters in order to get the junk mail. If they let me subscribe to the junk mail, I'd just subscribe to the junk mail, but they won't. So I get a lot of them. I don't know, 20, 30, 40 of them a month. So I don't remember what the hell I've subscribed to and what I haven't subscribed to. I don't know. But I pay attention to them all. I also pay attention to them for personal reasons because I'm diabetic. So I noticed now this month. So here's the envelope, and it's Dr. So-and-so's newsletter, and it's here's this month's issue of your paid subscription newsletter. And I've been reading it for 3 months. And I started to think again as I was reading it this month, I sure as hell don't remember subscribing to this thing. Well, we do have a file, somewhere of So I now go dig. Well, I never did subscribe to this thing. He's doing this. He's renting a list and he's sending it out as if it was a paid subscription newsletter. Well, it's the best teaser copy you could ever put on an envelope other than photo enclosed, do not bend. I mean, because it immediately moves it over from the B pile to the A pile because you paid for it. It's a little deceptive, but it is brilliant. So I come home from NSA in 19 whatever with Buster Crabbe on the plane, and I got a client, and then I decided to start a newsletter. And so my very first newsletter was for speakers, and it was called Marketing Your Services, and it was $179 a year. And the NSA market at that time was maybe, I don't know, 3,000 people in it. So I mailed the crap out of them to get people to subscribe at $179 a year, and I got 400 or 500 subscribers in a period of 5 or 6 months. And then I just sent it to the rest of them as if they had paid to subscribe to it. And I treated them all as paid subscribers. So I took the money from the ones I could get money from, and I sent it to the rest of them as if they had given me money. Because really, I wanted to be in front of them and build the reputation in that small community and in that small constituency. So now let's say, for the sake of conversation, that you want to market to CEOs of the 500 biggest companies in Minneapolis. Well, so you go home and you start, the Success Secrets newsletters for CEOs of large Minnesota companies. And you pick your hit list, and you make sure you got their names and titles and all that stuff right, even if you got to do phone calls in order to get it, because to look perfect, it's got to be perfect. And then you start sending them their paid newsletter every month that they never subscribe to. And before you know it, you're going to be getting responses for things you lead generate for in the newsletter, and pretty soon somebody's going to call you up and say, can you come over to my company and talk about this? And they will never know that they weren't a paid subscriber, and you need never tell them. If I need to, I could do that a third time for you, but you shouldn't have to hear it a third time. And so I have never been without at least one newsletter since 1978. And in some cases, I have had 3 or 4 or 5. Some have been real. Some have not been real, meaning some people have been paying for them. Some people have only thought they have paid for them. And some have been constructed for very small constituencies for a brief period of times, only to set up the entry into those constituencies. I briefly flirted about a year and a half ago with doing something with all the freelance professional copywriters there are in the country. There's a bunch of them in one directory, so they're like easy to find, which is what makes it which is what tempted me. It's almost like deja vu of NSA for me. I mean, I'm one of them. I know how they think. I know how they behave. Here they are all in one place, so I don't have to go hunt for them. I know most of them are starving, which is good news. They actually publish their fees, so I know who's getting paid what. They publish their clients. I know who they're working for. For me to go after them would be formulaic. One of the things I would do if I was going to go after them is I would start a newsletter for professional copywriters. I would take a run through that list and get as many of them to subscribe as possible for money, and then I would treat them all as if they had subscribed for a period of time. And then I would set them up for the series of kills. Be that seminar, be that coaching program, whatever. I talk myself out of it because I don't have enough time to do it, but if I was going to do it, that's what I would do. You should see the list of stuff I talk myself out of. It's not as long as it needs to be, but you ought to see the list of the things I talk myself out of. So, I mean, over the years, I've had Marketing Your Services for speakers. I've had a Practice Building Secrets newsletter for chiropractors, dentists, veterinarians, and podiatrists when we went into the chiropractic and dental fields. And that's had as many, by the way, as 2,000 and some odd paid subscribers. And the forerunner to the No BS letter was a thing called the Business Secrets letter. And then the No BS marketing letter has been around since 1991. Much more primitive than, what you see today, but nevertheless. And of course now the No BS marketing, the affluent letter, or the info letter. these have produced well over, either directly or indirectly, these have produced well over half of all of my money. They are the foundation for everything. And again, IBAs in the room have an advantage in their local consulting businesses and their coaching business in a sense because we're providing that for them. So they already got a foundation. But as you grow and get bigger and more sophisticated, or those of you that are building national constituencies, you've got to do this. And one of the answers to your dilemma, wherever he went, where'd Mr. Cold Call Prospecting guy go? There you are. Okay, I thought maybe you got mad and left. This is one of the answers to a dilemma like that, is again, if you must go cold, then turn cold into warm sneakily. So take your constituency, create a newsletter for them, get those who will subscribe to subscribe, then treat the rest of them as if they had, okay, and build that relationship over 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 months. It usually won't take that long for somebody to start coming to you. It doesn't take much demonstration anymore of competence to start attracting money, because there is so little of it. Forget expertise, competence. People take notice that you actually were able to get a newsletter out every month for 3 months. Somewhere, one of your prospective clients says, "Cripe, I got the same gray envelope 3 months in a row. I better talk to this guy because I'd like to know how the hell he's getting anybody to get anything out 3 months in a row." I mean, I'm serious. It doesn't take much of a show of competence anymore in order to attract a lot of money. Woody Allen's right. 50% of it's showing up. Now, the other 50% is pretty critical, but when you think of it, the whole first half is like showing up. Holy cripe, he managed to show up. I mean, in the restaurant industry, you get promoted from fry cook to regional manager in about 6 months if you can manage to just show up sober. Oh my God, you're like VP in a hurry, because I mean, they're like, oh, they're wildly impressed. So that really is the good news for all of us, is it takes less and less and less to impress people, because everything around them is like worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. But this is it's a leapfrog to the top of the heap tool. See, because being the writer, editor of a prestigious, specialized newsletter is like being the author of the book. But you don't have to wait to get the book printed. I mean, you can do this tomorrow, Now, the newsletter doesn't have to be spectacular, but it can't be crap either. And there's a whole host of things you want to get good at doing when you do one of these things, and that's a whole other topic. But this has been my key. And so if you want my key, that's the key. Newsletter or newsletters used in a very strategic way. Can you just wait 5 minutes? You stay right there? Because I'm almost done with how to get them cold. The other way to get them cold is going all the way back to the sort of classic JPDK information business model of you lead generate with paid advertising. There's no secret to what you are doing. And you get people to raise their hands and request information. This is, if you've been paying attention, this is becoming an increasingly common ad that used to, by the way, only be in magazines for very rich people. This is fundamentally a consultant coach to help, actually, most of the clients are, of course, men, to help men with a lot of money and zero social skills find trophy wives. That's what it is. And their consulting packages are in the $15,000 to $75,000 range. How they get paid is a fee plus a performance bonus on any relationship that lasts 6 months or longer, and another performance bonus if they actually get married. But it's no different than, so what I wanted to show you is it's absolutely no different than, now here's a business ad. So here's, do I have it? I don't have a slide for it. Well, here's a classic business ad. Here's the Chauncey Hutter ad, right, which is in the tax planning, how an amazingly simple accidental secret allows you to instantly triple your tax business in 30 days, take a vacation during the middle of the tax season, and drive your competition absolutely crazy by living your no-stress, making big money lifestyle. And ultimately, it's an offer for a free report, right? That's all this is, same deal. There's a story, here's an offer, and here's what to do next to get more information. Okay, it's classic lead generation advertising. And it's overt. But now, unlike the direct to appointment, it does allow this advertiser to move backwards from being overt to being takeaway-ish by virtue of the materials that get delivered when they raise their hand and the next step that gets put in front of them. So now the next step, instead of a sales letter that sells a box, the next step can be an application that has to be filled out in order to get a phone appointment, for example. And now we're starting to reinstitute a takeaway selling model, even though we have had to go out and overtly generate a lead. See it? Okay, what do you want?
My question actually ties in your last 2 points. So, which do you think is the best model? So you sell the product first with a forced continuity newsletter,
Well,
or do you, or do you do the free?
Look, there is no worst model or best model. There may be for a particular individual in a particular set of circumstances. Ideally, in a perfect world, you would have, as I described to Harvey yesterday, you would really have 3 businesses stacked on top of each other. I'll be lazy and won't go, well, I'll draw it. Maybe I'll draw, oh yeah, here we go. God forbid they should take the pens out of the box. I guess another $5,000 a day, you get the pens out. All right, think this, Dave. So this one is sort of a traditional information marketing business, right? So we got product with forced continuity at the bottom. Then we have a higher level of continuity. Then we have some kind of coaching. And maybe we have another higher level of coaching, right? In here is one-on-one stuff, we do it for you stuff, okay? And then way up here at the top is, so somebody's going to give you $200,000 to completely come and fix their mess or create their business from scratch. Now you could run any one of these without the other two. You could run this, you could run this, you could run this, you could run this and this, you could run this and this, right? You could start here, actually go backwards. But under utopian circumstances, somebody does all 3, right? But, because if you have this, you have no pipeline. What this does is give you a pipeline where customers have a place to mature, right? Whereas when you bring them directly in at the middle or the high end, you're always bringing them in directly at the middle or the high end. So if you have the pipeline full of maturing customers who over a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years are getting ready, at some point in time you no longer have to do anything in order to fill the top 2. They're coming up out of the pipeline begging to get there. However, creating the bottom pyramid, you know, that's like a real business. I mean, it's got, ask Bill. I mean, it's got, you know, infrastructure, and it's got employees, and it's got products, and it's got ads in 20 magazines and 6-step sequences, and, you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. So for some people, I advise skipping it. For some people, I advise go back and build it after you got that other thing. For some people, I say you got to have it, so go do that first and worry about the other later. You know, so like in Charlie's case, I mean, we had long conversations about this with Charlie. Should he have that bottom? And you've been privy to those conversations. And the answer is yes, he should, but as a practical matter, he has no time to even pay attention to it. And his chairside value in his practice is so high that it's hard to take him away from the practice. Plus, like me, he has a longer list of things he should say no to than he says no to. So, you know, he's dental practice, spa, car wash, real estate, I mean, you know. So there's no time. So, but the good news is there are resources. So we can skip all that, spend $9,000 to make the sale, you know. Now, in 3 years, he still has to go spend $9,000 to go get the next new guy to fill the hole that just occurred if we don't go back and do this, right? So it's almost which model is not the right question as to which model for which person at which time in which order is really the right question.
And we need to pay you for a day of consulting to get.
Well, no, I really wasn't doing that.
No, I know.
It's just that I wish there was a simple answer to your question, and there just isn't. It's like in the area exclusive business, it's like the to franchise or not franchise question. Well, a lot of it, depends on, do you want income or do you want equity? I mean, I don't know how helpful that was, but it's the best I got.
Okay, can I just give you a quick model?
Yeah.
Try to sell the product first, go through all the steps, and as a drop-down offer, do the newsletter.
Oh, yes. Oh, okay. So, yeah, sure. Some people hide the newsletter.
Right,
yeah.
So don't make it part of the first product offer.
Well, there's lots of ways to play with that. You could hide it altogether and use it as the drop-down offer. You could go ahead and force continuity on the product, but then still use it as a drop-down offer if you couldn't get them to buy the product. You could actually run the two front ends against each other simultaneously, and I'm not sure it would make any difference. For some period of time, both Hartunian and Yellen ran the give me $7, some version of, and they had other front ends running at the same time. In Success Track, in the third and fourth year, we ran the Practice Building Secrets letter offer at the same time we were running come to free seminars and see our speaker offer. And about the only bad thing that happens is like confusion, right? And of course, if you have telesharks, that confusion is a real virtue, because if they call and they're confused, usually the question is, which one of these things should I do, right? Well, if you happen to have telesharks in a room to answer that question, great. But I'd still rather have a confused person on the phone than no person trying to communicate at all. But yeah, we ran for 2 years. We ran a newsletter thing through the list all the time, free newsletter. We didn't do free trial continuity because we didn't know about it. So we did like free and then try and get them. We did the customary model of we'll invoice you later. We did the free book. We did a free book with call to 900 number to get the book, but you were charged $3.99 a minute while you were on the phone getting the book. And we ran all that at the same time we were running a seminar promotions.
Great, thank you.
The other thing, since you bring it up indirectly, is what I discovered a number of times is, it's a little beat the control trick, by the way. In the newsletter business, as everybody probably knows, the most traditional offer is the giant bribe offer. Is the subscribe to the newsletter for X dollars and you get this big mountainous pile of 56 free reports or 22 free CDs or whatever. The two usual variations on that are 1 year, 2 year, 3 year subscription, and you get bigger and bigger piles of stuff depending on whether you do the 1 year, the 2 year, or the 3 year. Or here's choice of 52 free reports, pick any 8 free with your subscription, right? So those are like the most traditional things there are, right? In a number of cases, that's been a control. I've been able to just flip the control, make the bride package the $149 offer, and you get 1 year of the newsletter free. One works the same as the other. The client runs one through the list in January, the other one through the list in February, the other one in March, the other one in April, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it's a good beat the control trick.
Good, thank you.
Okay, let's talk about what we send people. I told you before, you know, you want to wow them. You don't want to be modest here. We'll get through this pretty quick, and then we'll take a break. The big box strategy. I'm on page 67. Rulock. Where are you? Yeah. Do you have any idea how much you've spent? First of all, when did I get you? What year? Okay. You have any idea how much you've spent? Okay. And you came from the speaker box, right? Yeah. So he came from this. This was used to sell a seminar, but the point is the same. Okay? So this thing's got 2 audio tapes in it. It's got a videotape in it. By the way, Bill, this is the video I sent you the other day. Yeah. And then inside was a sales letter for the seminar. Okay? And then the whole thing was shrink wrapped. And it was mailed with a label on the shrink wrap. The box, by the way, has a guarantee. If you go through the whole box, we'll send you $25 if you think we're wasting your time. We sent, I don't know, 4,000 of them, 5,000 of them, 6,000 of them. And we filled the seminar. And that I know, and if I really thought hard, there's probably at least 5 or 6 of you that have moved from there. But Rulock alone paid for the whole campaign. Everything else is gravy. Now, it's expensive. You know, it's not cheap to do. They're not cheap to make. And they're certainly not cheap to send, especially in mass. If you just make a few, you almost got to make them yourself, or the cost is, you know, beyond the pale. But so what's everybody else sending to sell a seminar to that list? Well, they're sending a sales letter in an envelope. If they're really going big, they're adding a CD. Nobody's doing this. Nobody. So the big box strategy I've now used again and again and again and again to sell seminars, to sell coaching for consultants, business opportunities, speakers to get speaking engagements. Nito Cabane, who's speaking at the Super Conference, he has a big box that is, Steve and I were talking about it on the break. I should have brought it. I have one somewhere. It's the big black one, right? He's still using, it's black with full color on the outside, and the books are inside in die cut.
Yes, so probably 12 by, let's say, 12 to 13 by 20 by 4 by 5.
Okay. So the box is like a foot this way. It maybe looks like 2 Monopoly boxes, game boxes in size, and it's real thick, real high, and it's gorgeous. I mean, it's black coated stuff with gold and full color, professional picture of Cabane, and you open it up, and like this one, there's die cut holes. Each one of his books with a full color cover is fit in one of the die cut holes, and there's, what else is in it besides the books? There's a CD in there?
Yeah, there's books, audio stuff, profiles.
Yeah, there's a CD, and then there's a client profile thing, and a testimonial book, and I mean, the thing's a behemoth, you know? You would no more throw this in a wastebasket. I mean, you would just feel ill. I mean, you would start, maybe, and then you would, I mean, I got it 5-6 years ago. I don't have any it's in the Phoenix office. That's why I didn't bring it. But I mean, I can't bring myself to throw it out. So it keeps moving from shelf to shelf, place to place. I've pirated the books out of it, but I can't bring myself to throw the box out. It's just so pretty, and it's so big, and you feel so guilty. You know he spent 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks on the thing. I mean, nobody else does it. So that sucker lands on your desk. It's done something. They are not tossing it. The gatekeeper ain't tossing it. They're not tossing it. They're at least going to open it. You got a shot. Right? So for a consulting client or a speaking engagement inquiry, that's what he's sending. He's sending the humongous, classy, beautiful, incredible box. Now, the only thing he's not doing that I would do is I might have all that pretty stuff and I might have the beautiful, pretty box, but then I'd have an ugly 48-page sales letter in it, that control linearly my message. Right? But the big box thing works purely because it is a big box. Now, you can also do it on a primitive ugly thing like Larry Dolan with the big ugly duct tape and a box full of testimonial letters. That works too. Some of it depends on the market, who you're sending it to. But the big box strategy is something you really ought, to be aware of and understand and think about. Brochures. If you are going to insist on doing them, figure out a way to make them slightly different from a normal brochure. I used the annual report kind of look. For a while, I used a menu kind of look thing, a menu of services. Robert Ringer's description in his Winning Through Intimidation of his original brochure. Cobain's first brochure when he was starting out was not the big box, but it was Robert Ringer description style. And the best thing about it, which I copied shamelessly, was the fold-out page, sort of like a Playboy centerfold, for a frame of reference for you, Carruthers. Sort of like the Playboy centerfold. Well, the beauty of that thing is once you folded it out, it's kind of, messy to get back in, and so you got a shot at somebody. His has type on it. But do something different. Publish. We already talked about that. Publish, 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 publish. White papers, special reports, surveys, newsletters. Placement in other people's books, products, and newsletters. This is something we didn't talk about. And this is also no expertise required. Hardly anybody checks the references of the person who submits good content to them. And a whole lot of people are starving for content. So you can be published tomorrow in somebody else's publication. And that has reprint value. So almost every info marketer at least puts out a newsletter. Okay? The Information Marketing Association, wherever Robert went, I think it's every 2 months. Is it every 2 months?
Every month.
Every month now. There's a CD circulated, shared, copyright-free, you can use it content.
That's every 2 months.
That's every 2 months. That's what I thought. Okay, so every 2 months you get this CD, and there's all kinds of content on it, articles and whatever, interviews that you can use in your newsletters. But what's important is if you're an IA member, you can put your stuff on it. So now your article's appearing in the Restaurant Marketing Systems newsletter. It's appearing in our newsletter. It's appearing in Charlie Martin's newsletter for dentists. It's appearing in Scott Tucker's newsletter for mortgage brokers, because everybody needs content. And so they're looking on that disc and they're picking off the stuff. Well, I have made a huge point my entire time in this business, and still do today, of getting in other people's stuff. All right? Why? Because I'm going to get their best customers. So I shouldn't say it exactly this way, but, well, first of all, in some cases I managed to figure out a way to get paid for it, but that doesn't almost matter. But so Tucker's a co-branding guy, right? So Tucker gives me $140,000 in order to co-brand with me. And one of those things is he gets to use my content in his stuff, right? Well, I should be paying him, but because think about this. If I go into the mortgage broker niche somehow myself and get a mortgage broker as a Glazer Kennedy customer. I got a mortgage broker as a Glazer Kennedy customer. If I get a Scott Tucker customer as a Glazer Kennedy customer, I already got a better, smarter customer. He already dealt with all the dummies. He already screened them and sifted and sorted them once. He's already taught them how to buy stuff. Okay? They've already been through the whole process. I got a trained buyer. I'm stealing his best. Okay? And if you get them from 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 or 20, see, I'd rather have one from him, one from him, one from him, one from him, where they've already trained him to be good customers. So your article in somebody else's newsletter, whatever activity that produces for you, is better activity than you could produce, say, in a trade journal in the same industry, even though the circulation is smaller. Okay? You still have pretty good reprint value because you got the front page of the official restaurant marketing newsletter, and here you are, and here's your article. Okay? Yeah, being in somebody else's book, even if it's a paragraph. Okay? So people ask me for blurbs. I usually go back with, give you the blurb, but hey, let me write the foreword. Let me write a chapter. Here's something you can put in chapter 6 of your book. Here's something you can put in chapter 8 of your book. Because I want to get seeded into their books. I want to get seeded into their products. I want to be like everywhere like horse manure. That's where I want to be. I want to be in like everybody. So every time you open anybody's something, shit, Kennedy's in there. I keep hearing about this Kennedy guy, right? And here's what we hear a lot. I probably shouldn't say this either. We hear, I saw you in Tucker stuff. I saw you in Brian Sachs stuff. I saw you in Tollison stuff. I figured out if they're all getting their stuff from you, I ought to come find you. Well, see, that's a really good customer because he's bought 3 people's stuff, right? And he's actually read it and listened to it, and he's determined to go hunt down me. Well, you can't get a better guy. How could you get a better person? Well, you don't have to be me to do that. Okay? You don't need 20 years experience. You could write your first article tomorrow. If it's a good article, it makes sense, and it's useful, and you got some kind of little credential and plug at the bottom, somebody's going to put it in their publication, and as soon as you're in one, you can send that to everybody else, and you can domino it. If you know anybody who's doing business books, you try and get in the book. We still get leads. I'm in Raleigh Pinsky's book. We get leads. I hear from people who, I found you in this. Our kind of business is, and even on a local level, your business, if you're an IBA or a consultant in a niche, this is small numbers multiplied. You are unlikely to find, other than speaking, you are unlikely to find a source and a way to get a whole crapload of good clients from one place. You are more likely to get one from here, one from there, one from here, one from there. And so I have taken great pains to get mentioned, talked about, written about, and included in as many things as I can. And even if being in Chauncey Hutter's stuff brings me one guy, he might be a Rulock. He might be worth $150,000 over a period of time. Well, how many do you need to have justified making sure that you're there? Remember the original wealth magnets. Be somebody, be someplace. This is what I mean by place. Be in these places. So furnish material to other people. Try and get your stuff everywhere. We also, if you pay attention, I go out of my way to create these like viral books that everybody gives away. For me, it's the Ultimate Success Secret book, the one with the red cover, and the Farting Cat book. And look, we've sold now 150,000 plus copies of the Farting Cat book. Okay? We ain't making much money on the Farting Cat book. Pete makes a little. I make even a little or little. Okay? My royalty is like little. Okay? But the woman who works for us in the barn, who gave me the idea, because I heard her say, why do I have to always sit next to the Farting Cat? Wrote it down, said that'd be a good book title. See, so I give her a penny a book. So she gets a royalty check. Well, she's ecstatic. But it ain't about the money from the Farting Cat books. It's about, does the Farting Cat book bring us a RULAC? Say, does Tucker giving away 5,000 Farting Cat books this year? Will there be one guy? And this person giving away 5,000 Farting Cat books, will there be one guy? And one from here, one from there, one from here, one from there. They all add up. There's a couple of samples, other samples in your notebook of promotional pieces. This is like the cheapest thing I ever did. This is a reduction of it. But I used this for a couple of years pretty effectively. This is just a newspaper tear sheet. And so that became my primary brochure. And we didn't attempt to kid anybody. I didn't print the grocery coupons or the Wall Street Journal thing on the back. I printed it both sides with my stuff. But they're like 2 cents a piece. And they're big. And they're unusual. And people pay attention to them and so forth. I put that sample in there. This is more about what we're talking about. Getting someplace a second ago. This is an old issue of Travis McPhee's Successful Practice Letter, which is Jerry Jones' old original partner, for anybody that's tracking lineage. And this went to all dentists. It went to dentists who subscribed, and it went pretty much to every dentist who didn't subscribe, treating them as if they had subscribed. And so I got named as the Practice Growth Guru of the Year in Successful Practice newsletter. How did I get that distinguished and important honor? I had Travis as a client, and I said, hey, why don't you make me your Practice Guru of the Year? And I milked that a lot. And continue to use the reprint of that page to today. We talked about testimonials. There's all kinds of ways to present testimonials. There's the group them on a sheet like this. I wanted to point this out to you for a reason. It's another reason to do books. This is a testimonial page from one of my professional brochures along the way. I think it's from the annual report thing. So this is really in a brochure about hiring Dan as a speaker or as a consultant. But there's 2 testimonials down here that are about one of my books. Well, why do I want testimonials about a book in the middle of a testimonial page that is about getting me clients? Well, because one of those testimonials is from Joan Rivers, and the other one is from, at the time, a hugely successful infomercial, Perfect Smile. And I didn't have testimonials from either one of them about me. I only had testimonials from them about the book. And they are more important than what the testimonial was about. The Joan Rivers thing always caused, you know Joan? Tell me about Joan. Well, I don't care what they want to hear about as long as they want to hear something. Because now we're in dialogue. And the Perfect Smile thing, because I got a lot of business out of the infomercial industry, that was extremely useful. Now, the other thing to think about is those testimonials exist because I had a book, okay, and went to get cover blurbs for the book. The Perfect Smile one is actually a secondary favor arranged by Greg Renker at Guthrie Renker, as a matter of fact. But without the book, I couldn't have got them. Once I got them for the book, I could keep using them all sorts of places. I gave you my primary testimonial book that I used for a long time. I gave you pages of that in there too. It's actually published like this, so it's just testimonials, in a book form. Called your attention to a few of them. I got the Brenda Dillon one in there for no other reason than I really liked it. I mean, I didn't write any of these, by the way. These are all, I just really thought it's still my favorite testimonial of, all of the ones that I've had. This is in there for 2 reasons. One, because it's a testimonial, with a story. See, without Irish immigrant in front of $8.40 invested in a sales letter produces $26,000, et cetera, it's not nearly as interesting a story. as when you stick Irish immigrant in front of it. And furthermore, it allows me to show the newsletter in my book of testimonials, which there's a whole bunch of reasons, to do that. This one is in there purely because it's Hewlett-Packard, and I don't have a lot of big company stuff, so it was good to have a Hewlett-Packard one. In some cases, I reprinted the whole letters. This one's in there again for the same reason as Hewlett-Packard. It's B2B, and I have less business to business than I have anything else, so that's about as business to business as you can get. This one's in there because it's a cool, attention-getting picture, and I like the picture. So she sent me this picture of herself. It's a babe in a bikini on 2 elephants. How many of you have ever been sent a testimonial with a letter of a babe in a bikini standing on 2 elephants? That's probably nobody but me, right? Do you think? This is in there. Why is this in there? This is in there because this is now another one of these personal ones. This is a booze problem related one. And so it's actually in there as disclosure and encouragement to connect on that level. This is here because it's Australia. And having clients from distant lands, you want to remember that. Having clients from distant lands is still extremely exciting and interesting and impressive to people. You would think you still had to go over there on the Queen Mary and take 3 months getting there. The way people react. You can actually still get a gatekeeper to put somebody on the phone by adding the words calling long distance. Now, you would think that would have gone away, but that still works. You want to remember that, by the way, if you're trying to get somebody on the phone. Infinitely better to say, this is Dan Kennedy calling for Dr. Altadonna long distance than this is Dan Kennedy calling for Dr. Altadonna. For some reason, that still works. It creates some kind of little sense of urgency to go get them. Having a client from a distant place is still interesting to people. The Bridget Campbell one is in there for the same reason that the Brenda Dillon one is in there. I always liked it. This is in there because it's a weird occupation. Right? And it's an interesting occupation. So there's a testimonial from magicians. This one is in there not so much because I was prospecting for any work from nonprofits, because I never did, not because I wanted work from nonprofits, but it got me a football player, and then it allowed me to get pictures in of the football player and the football player with a celebrity. Well, that's the with strategy, okay? I'm not with Ditka, but this guy's a client of mine, and he's with Ditka, so that's the same as being with Ditka. Hartunians is in there because it's a really, really, really good testimonial letter. You cannot overuse these things. It's impossible. You got to get them all the time. Get as many as you can. Keep getting them updated as your relationships with people continue over a period of time. Use them, use them, use them, use them, use them everywhere. Because what they say about you is infinitely more persuasive than what you say about you. Last thing before we break. Let's have a quick discussion of ethics. Here's my advice to you about all of this. Number one, don't take clients you shouldn't. So you ought to define for yourself what that means. All right? But the best advice I can give you is figure out what that means for you and then do everything you possibly can to resist the temptation to take one you know you shouldn't. I don't care how broke you are. If you take one you shouldn't, all that does for you is make you broker. You may temporarily keep a car from being repossessed, but trust me, it's not worth it. The car is replaceable. Your time, peace of mind, sanity of dealing with the client you shouldn't have taken, you can never get back. I have one from 25 years ago. I still occasionally wake up in the middle of the night thinking about her, and not in a good way. The money has long since been spent. The problem the money solved has long since been gone. Somehow it would have been solved without her. The memory haunts me for life. The best reason not to take a client is you know you won't be able to satisfy them. Big mistake to take them if you know you won't be able to satisfy. And it doesn't make them bad. So the two examples I got here, they both, for somebody, would be and were great clients. And I like them personally, and I have enormous respect for them. Bill Phillips, when he was at EAS, I would love to have worked with Bill Phillips, but I would never have been able to satisfy Bill Phillips. Because if Bill wakes up at 2 o'clock in the morning with an idea, he wants everybody on a conference call at 2:30, all the copy written, and there better be 500,000 pieces in full color, drop it in the mail by noon the next day. Now that don't make Bill a bad guy. That don't even make him wrong. But it makes him really wrong for me. Okay? Ken Roberts people, they are not going to be happy unless they can pick up the phone and talk to their copywriter. There is no way to make them happy unless they can do that. Doesn't matter. I could make them $50 million. They wouldn't be happy. And not even for them, and not even for all the money either one of them might have paid me, am I going to be picking up the phone and talking to people at random. It's easier to go find somebody else to give me money. So I know I'm not going to satisfy them. To take them and have them unsatisfied, life's too short and reputation's too precious. Okay? So figure out what for you is not a good client, and then don't take them. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. The temptation is enormous to tell the client what they want to hear about timelines, deadlines, results, in order to get the money, especially when you need it. You will regret it. Okay? Don't prescribe based on ability to pay. An awful lot of consultants do this. The temptation is understandable, and in 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10 cases, you probably get away with it. But eventually you're going to be caught, and it's going to not be pretty. So I have a formula for calculating a project. It's a real formula, and it doesn't matter to me whether it's a Fortune 500 company or it's a little guy just starting this company. Fees the same, deals the same. And if anybody ever compares notes, they're going to find the only variable is the anticipated aggravation surcharge, and I disclose it. So if I add it, I say to the person face to face, there's $5,000 added to this contract because I think you're going to be a pain in the ass. If by some chance you're not a pain in the ass, I may give it back to you when we're all done. All right? So if anybody ever compares notes, it's right there. Don't cut deals. You will be tempted to do it. I'm going to let one person in my coaching group for free because it's so good to have him in there. I'm going to let him in at half price because nobody keeps a secret. Ever. Somebody will compare notes. Don't cut deals. Plus, you don't just lose the money. You lose the power. You lose the control. Right? They either pay or they don't pay. We talked about this earlier. Be wary of recommending others. Be very careful. Be very cautious. Be very demanding. Somebody asked about our criteria. I didn't really want to have a big discussion about it. One is, of course, that people guarantee what they sell to you. We don't let anybody sell to you without a guarantee. That's really a small criteria, but it's still an important criteria. Don't steal from your clients. If you're going to use work product in other ways, disclose it. If they have, never sign a non-disclosure agreement. Now, refuse under all circumstances. But on the other hand, if they have truly proprietary information, which a lot of people think they have, but they don't, but occasionally somebody actually does. It's always a great shock to me, but occasionally somebody actually has something unique or that they really are getting to the market with first. Don't disclose it. In your group settings, have clear rules and frequent reminder discussions of what is fair play with SWD. What's fair play about copying, using, and the best rule connected to all other rules is, if in doubt, ask the other person. Okay? I have a client right now. I have one client who paid me $75,000 to write his campaign. He's letting another guy in the coaching group knock it off. Okay? Guy asked him. He's letting him knock it off. Paid me $75,000 for it. That's fine. They made an arrangement. He didn't ask the guy for any money. If he had asked him for money, the guy would have paid him. He just chose not to. Okay? That's fine. But if the same guy had taken it all and used it and simply taken out chiropractic and put in martial arts and walked off with it without asking him, the two of them are in the same coaching group, he'd be madder than a wet hen. Okay? So you try and get yourself and everybody else to play as fair as you can. Number 7 is the best tip of all. The word avoid is the important word. Try and avoid all misunderstandings. So number 1, disclose other relationships. Don't let them think for a minute they got some kind of exclusive. They don't. Never work without detailed written agreements. Never, 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 never. LeGrand's a good example for me. Well, I've known Ron for 25 years, like Ron. Ron's as close to a friend as I can allow a client to be. However, I wouldn't do work for Ron without a written contract on a bet. Not because of distrust, but because we're both old, feeble. His memory's no good, mine's not either. All right? There's going to be a day sometime when one of us ain't going to remember it exactly the same way the other one remembered it. Has to happen. Best way to avoid it? Paper. Paper trail everything. I'm amazed at people who don't do it. I nag people to do it all the time. I nag myself to do it all the time. See, in a business relationship, there is no casual phone conversation. The very definition of a business relationship precludes casual conversation. So there is no casual conversation. There's business conversation. That's what a business relationship is. So in the hallway, on the phone, if it's anything that has a tail to it, it ought to have a paper trail to it. Tail meaning it controls something that's supposed to happen, that he's supposed to do, that you're supposed to do, that you agreed to do, that he agreed to do, or it's ever likely to come up again. If it's got a tail, it ought to have a paper trail. Now that doesn't mean it's got to be a signed off on agreement. It just means that somebody's got to memo somebody. And since you can't rely on them to memo you, you got to memo them. Bill just confirming, we talked on Tuesday, and you said you were going to bear the costs of getting XYZ transcribed, and I was going to take care of getting the photographs done. Not date, sign, return here, if this is what we agreed to. That's not necessary, but there's a written record, and it's in a file. So now if 6 months from now somebody doesn't remember it exactly the way the other one remembered it, well, wait a minute, I got a memo. Okay? I memoed you on such and such a day. If there's a tail, there ought to be a paper trail. See, it's poetic. Okay? Should help you remember it. Number 8, don't steal clients from others. Bad idea. A very bad idea. I have from time to time, there's a very famous copywriter who's the best copywriter on the planet, but quite often the caveat is he never gets any copy written. And so I have, on a fairly regularly occurring basis, unhappy clients of this particular copywriter coming to me looking for a new home. This guy's a friend of mine, and he's been very good to me over the years. I don't want his clients. I never want a situation of him being irritated thinking I stole a client. And so in 10 years, I have taken one. And I called him first. And I said, you know, the guy's here. He's pissed at you. I don't think you're ever going to get another dollar from him. You don't want to be stepping in front of his car. You know, I'd like to work with them. Do you want money? Do you want, but I wouldn't do it without the phone call. Jeff Paul and I are friends. Ben Altadonna has migrated to me from Jeff. Ed O'Keefe has migrated to me from Jeff. In every instance, I called Jeff first. This guy wants to come over here. When Ben called the very first time, said he wanted a consulting day, I immediately called Jeff and I said, now here's what's going to happen. If I have a consulting day with Ben, Ben's going to want me to do some stuff for him. Some of that stuff I'm going to want to do. Me doing some of that stuff may get in the way of you doing some stuff with him. If you don't want me to take him, tell me now, and I won't even do the day with him. Once I do the day with him, you can't ever be upset about anything else that happens with him, because you should know I'm probably going to say yes to anything he wants me to do. Do you want me to take the day, or do you not want me to take the day? Then I paper trail it. Just a reminder, on such and such a day, I called you, we talked about Ben, you said, have Adam, Dan. Because I don't want a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I don't want any disgruntlement. You don't want it either. Okay? Ninth thing, not on the overheads. And then we will take our 2 o'clock break. Most of them didn't even get it, you know. The big ethical issue for consultants, coaches, business opportunity marketers, etc., and the thing that gets in people's way more than anything else about making maximum money in any of these fields is how they feel about the people who they take money from who don't get any results. You got to get, or you will become emotionally ill in this business. You got to get that that is not your responsibility. You did not give birth to them. They will not visit you in the old folks' home. It is not your responsibility to make them successful in any way, shape, or form. And it is generally a bad idea to take that responsibility on, either actually or emotionally. And as a practical matter, by the way, you can't make them successful, even if you wanted to, and even if you tried. Every population resorts itself into 5, 15, 80. No matter what, you go sleep with all of them on their couch, get up every morning, drag them out of bed, get them out. Don't make any difference. I did that when I was 16, 17, 18, and 19 in the Amway business. I'm telling you, 5, 15, 80, don't make any difference. You can go over there, you can sit with them, you can make the phone calls with them, you can do the meeting for them, you can recruit to 5, 15, 80. Don't make any difference. So even if you wanted to go sleep on the couch with them, drag them out of bed, make them do it, don't make any difference. So as a practical matter, you can't make them successful anyway. So now you got to decide sort of what is the ethical line in all of this. If you decide the ethical line is that a majority of people have to achieve some level of whatever you define as success in the use of your advice or stuff, you will still be emotionally sick. Because the majority won't. 5, 15, 80. Okay? The best you'll go get's 20. That's the best you're going to do. So if you define it as majority, you will be emotionally ill. Right? What is unethical is if 100%, is if 20% of them follow your instructions and do what it is that you tell them to do and do as you ask, and none of them are able to be successful. If the thing or your advice is so inherently flawed that no one can do it, if the representation of what can be done is so far from reality that no one can do it, then that I would judge as unethical. Now, the legal standard for all of this, by the way, is not a topic of conversation for this seminar, but it's very different from what I just described to you. But fortunately, it is rarely enforced. So you got to decide what your ethical standard is about all of this. I strongly tell you it can't be about a majority and it can't be about everybody. It is about a minority, but it shouldn't be about zero. The thing should actually work. Now, there's advertising license, and even the Federal Trade Commission recognizes that without advertising license, nobody could sell anything. So Easy, quick weight loss is easy, quick weight loss only if you exercise 4 hours a day on the treadmill. And, so there's some room for advertising license in the promise, but at some point you've stretched the privilege of advertising license to outright fraud. Only you can decide where that stretch starts to occur, but you probably don't want to do it. So the thing should work for the person who really works it as you tell them to work it. Understand, all the way back to yesterday's conversation, there's wiggle room in that, though, because remember, it's about their value, not our value. Right? So, guy increases his business by 5%, that's not enough to make you happy, but if that's enough to make him happy, it works for him. All right, let's take our 2 o'clock break, and let's start back at 15 minutes past the hour. We got time for a few questions when we start back if you want to be at the table up at the beginning. And we are going to talk next about how to get paid.